I believe. No, but I need to start recording. Let me see. Small delay. Are we going to pop up? F5. There we are. Okay, so for hello, everybody. But I'm going to say we have a bunch of people. I'm probably too slow on this. On Facebook, people will watch for like the first 5-10 seconds. And so I just want to say, you skip through our intro 5 minutes to get to the lesson, 20 minutes to get to the first storyteller if you want to watch it afterwards or you're coming to this late. And everyone who's watching in the channel, hello. Hand it off to you, Mac, for the rest of the intro.
Sure. Welcome to the Workshop Show. The guy with the earphones and the real mic is the co-host and producer of the show, Daniel Andrew Boyd. Dan has come up with a dynamite lesson plan for today's workshop.
That is correct. And this is my co-host, Mac McDavid. Devitt. I'm so goodness gracious. Thank you so much. He is a lover of stories and storytelling, and he's a good friend, even though I screw up his name on a regular basis.
So we're the Workshop Show. You might want to think, why Workshop? Sort of fill you in. We believe that the stories you tell can continue to evolve as you improve your craft, as you grow in personal insight. This is the way the show is going to go down today. Dan starts by pulling us together for a 15-20-minute lesson at the top of the show. Then we're going to spend the next hour and a half diving deeply into the two stories you will hear tonight. We'll offer and receive feedback from each of the storytellers. This kind of close reading allows us to act like a director. After the feedback, we will ask each teller to immediately tell their story again, trying out the new version, Workshop. This way, we can all see in real time how our feedback works. Did the changes make the story work better, worse? Did we help the teller get closer to the real heart of the story? No, what do I always forget at this point?
The thing you always forget at this point, Mac, is to remind everyone that we are all friends here. We're all colleagues. We love each other and respect each other. And although we're going to tear each other to shreds, and especially our stories, it is all done to help and to point out where things can change for the better. So the criticism is always aimed at the work. It's never at the person. And it is there to help that person grow and not to tear them down. So if you're watching and you get worried that I'm about to burst into tears because someone has said something mean about something I've said, fear not. I am happy on the inside, and it's all for the good of the story.
Thanks, Noah. So look, each of the two tellers will get to tell their story 2 or maybe even 3 times. But here's the kicker. At the end of the show, one of the people who didn't tell a story retells one of the stories that they've heard tonight from the first person perspective, as though they have lived through the original storyteller's experience. Now, if you got the rundown, I'm going to send this over to Dan.
Awesome. Excellently done. We got through that quick. TJ, are you still having trouble logging into Twitch?
I got it.
Okay. Cool. I am going to talk today about listening. This will be our second one that's on listening. I'm going to start with something that is fundamental to where we come from as Storyluck and our storytelling ethos. And this is something that I hammer on a lot of the episodes. One is that you don't need a reason to do storytelling. You don't have to do a competition. You don't have to want to be the best storyteller in the world. You don't have to want to have 1 million views on YouTube. It is good in and of itself. Telling stories, communicating to other people, being good at telling stories and working on the art of telling stories is a fun thing to do, and it's okay to do just for fun. The second thing is telling stories is skill-based. You can get better at doing it if you practice this art. There's sort of this vision of two ways to look at life. And there's a spectrum on this, but learning any skill comes in different ways. And there are people who think that you're sort of naturally talented or skill comes from within. And then there's this idea and that's called in like the lingo, that would be an entity theorist, that it's sort of, there's an inherent person who has a skill. And the other way to think about things is that there's an incremental theorist. That's somebody who works at something and then they can get better and better, and that's just how the world is. And of course, like most of us have some sort of sliding scale. We think something is skill and something is we work on, yada yada. But one of the things people who have studied this have found is if you think everything is a skill, if you fail, you have this sort of light bulb where you say, well, either my strategy was wrong or my effort was wrong. If you have this talent entity mindset, you tend to think, oh, this is just something that I'm not good at. And so you don't work on it anymore. Here at Storyluck, we're very big into the idea of the incremental theory. If you practice the skill, you will get better. And that means looking at it in this idea of, if it fails, is my strategy wrong or is my effort wrong? How does this apply to the lesson today of listening? Like storytelling, listening is a skill. It is not just simply some people are good at it and some people aren't. Also, listening is good in and of itself. I mean, that seems like sort of a truism, but because it's what we're talking about, it's worth saying today. Truly listening to people, which we talked about last week, takes effort. It's easy to let things go in one ear and out the other. It's easy to nod your head, get the little snippets. But to really do a deep listen, it's sort of a meditative thing. And this deep listening, this active listening, is going to be helpful in business. It's going to be helpful in storytelling. It's going to be helpful in all of your relationships. I ran into a meme today, and it was a setup joke, and the setup was simply, I heard X. Every time I hear X, what I really hear is Y, right? And you can place anything into X and anything into Y, and you can kind of create a comedy from that tension, right? And what Y always was this subcontext, this cultural subcontext. When someone says X, I hear Y, right? When somebody says this thing about, their political view, this is what I hear about them is the why, right? You can do this, set this up. When somebody says they like to play with G.I. Joes, I hear, they are a child. Whatever it is, right? You can come up with a million of these jokes. That is a certain kind of listening. But when you're doing this active, deep listening, what happens when you hear them say X and your mind goes to that place? What they're really saying is Y. What's going to be your response when you're a deep listener? And like, what do you learn from these sorts of workshops? One of the things that you learn are there's these questions that you want to go to. Maybe your response is, hey, you said X, but what I heard is Y, and you tell that to them. And that's one way to start the conversation so that they can clarify. But I'm going to suggest that the most efficient way is if you hear something other than what they're saying, ask them questions. Active listening should bring about questions. What is this person saying? What do they want to tell me? What is deep down in this? And after you ask those questions, there will be opportunity to say, wow, when you said X, you meant to say ABC, but what I heard was Y. And then because you listened to them first, because you started with that question, they're going to be more open to listening to and hear you say the Y part. If you start with what I heard is Y when they said X, that's an immediate defensive thing. That's not what I said. So if you start with the question, and to pull it back into this idea of storytelling, what are questions that you hear us say in this show from week to week? Once somebody finishes a story, one of our go-to questions, almost always our first one, is, how'd you feel about it? How are you feeling right now? Check in with the other person. Try to really listen to what they're feeling right after telling a story. Another big question that we ask is, what were you trying to tell us? We have something in our heads. We're all searching for what's the meaning? What's the most important thing? What's the heart of this story? But in this context of working out where you're doing this deep listening, you go to that question. And these questions that are really about wanting to understand the other person, that helps you understand a broad range of stories. You've got to fight these biases to get to the questions. You've got to notice and acknowledge that you're hearing the why. The other thing I'm going to say about this is when we're telling stories, we're always saying multiple things, right? I tell a story, I have multiple goals. I want people to see everything. I'm taking someone on a journey. I want to take the audience by the hand and walk them through my story, scene to scene to scene. I want them to see repeating motifs. I want them to see multiple themes. I want them to get the moral at the end of the story. I am trying to tell them Y. And I do that by saying X. I do that by creating a plot. So if you're listening and someone says X and the only thing you hear is X, that is also not the deep listening that people are looking for when they're telling stories. There is subtext. Are all these nuances and little things that people are trying to get you to pick up on. There are Ys, there are ABCs. This sort of thing, this deep kind of listening, is something you can do for problem-solving issues in all sorts of relationships. If you think about it from a business perspective, if you're in sales, you're always doing the storytelling thing. You're trying to tell a story about your product. You're trying to tell a story about why someone needs that product. Do the listening first. What are the problems that person has? Do that deep listening, because a lot of times they'll come up with objections. And if they say, I don't want the project because of X, you need to get to that why, and you can't get there without asking questions. I'm using this math metaphor, and we've got a couple minutes left. I'm just going to open it up. Does anybody have questions?
Well, Dan, I want to talk about a different kind of listening as well.
Yeah.
And that's listen to your own heart as somebody who's listening to the story. I'm just talking about, I can pay attention to what's going on. Am I incredibly sad when I hear this story? Do I think it's really funny? So there's a whole nother, it's sort of, you're right about listening and also listening inside.
Right.
And the other kind of listening is, am I getting it? Am I being led by the hand? Did I fall off the train? Is that me? Is that the story? So I like this idea of how important listening is.
Yeah. And the other thing is, how does this get you to be better at telling your own stories? When you can listen to other people, you can listen to those things in your own story. You can start asking these questions. You find the questions that are helping you help other people communicate their themes, their motives, their plot points better, and you apply those same questions to your story. You can't get there without asking questions. It's never going to come fully from the page the first time. You're always going to have to write it and come at the work with these questions of what's going on. So the better you are at asking others those questions, the better you're going to be at asking yourself those sorts of questions. And then I am just going to end it on saying thank you so much. And we have two great tellers today.
So we're going to do introductions, Dan?
Yeah.
Okay. So, gang, if you want to, you can either put your hand up or you can unmute yourself, and that'll just help me know you want to be called, or I'll just go and just sort of call on you so we don't tumble all over each other. But if somebody gives me a hint, I'll go there too. So the way we do this for introductions is we give each one of our crew members here a prompt, the same prompt, and just have them answer it in a couple of sentences. So the prompt was, one thing I really treasure is, Susan?
My children. I really, really like my children, and I'm just so glad they're in my life, and I treasure them dearly.
Noah?
So beside other people, friends, family, etc., the thing I treasure most is going for walks, just because it helps me unwind, helps me focus, helps me, launches me on adventures, and is good for me. So that's my most treasured activity.
Suzii, how about you?
I would say for me, probably my ability to have like a clear mindset on situations. Like because of my past, I've been able to kind of like be at a neutral state where I can like observe things rather than reacting right away.
Mhm.
So I would say I treasure that.
Super. Kay?
I like my right-brained traits. I think I'm a logical and analytical person to an extent, but I enjoy the creative side of me. I like seeing another way forward. Was that going to be yours, Dan? Sorry.
How about you, Dan?
Mine was jog my memory. I totally wrote it down. Oh, I remember. So mine is, because we discussed it beforehand. Mine is my treasured moment is there's a look in somebody's eye. You catch somebody's eye and you're like, we're thinking the same thing. And even if you don't end up thinking the same thing, the next thing that happens is some sort of like awesome adventure. That's my treasured thing.
So TJ.
My dogs. They get on my nerves, but I love these little fuckers.
Thanks.
Here's the problem.
So one thing I really treasure is when Darla kind of just comes up behind me. I might be putting some cereal in my bowl or something. She just kind of wraps her arms around me from behind and just puts her head right next to my neck. She doesn't say anything, but I like that ambushing, you know.
That's lovely.
Okay, Dan, back to you.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna throw it out there because I didn't see if you saw in the chat. Are you up for taking over the transition into the last section of the show?
If you would be kind enough to remind me of some of the pointers of this transition, I certainly would.
We'll do it together. Cool.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So there are two people up for telling stories today. Is there any preference between you two who goes first? All right. Suzii, I'm going to have you go first.
Right. Okay, I wrote out my story for the first round just because I wanted to be very careful how I represented one of the characters. Okay, so I want to take you back to right before the beginning of my junior year in high school. My boyfriend and I had been together for a couple years at this point in my life, and I honestly thought we would be together forever. I didn't have many friends because our home life was always a bit hectic. And my mom had this way of always making us feel safe and resilient to all situations. And trust me, we've seen some situations. My mom had me just before her 20th birthday, and my sister by the age of 23. So to say her life was a constant state of survival mode is an understatement. Granted, her choices in men were never really great, but when you're raised in chaos, it's hard to break the cycle of subconsciously attracting chaos. We had just gone through a very hectic, unexpected move, partially my fault because I was always the one to ask too many questions and connect too many dots. My little brother was probably about 3 years old at the time. His dad was having a really hard time battling a meth addiction. So we were living in the same house, just without him. Drug addiction aside, him and I were very close, and we had been for years. So when my mom started bringing this new jackass over, naturally I was not having it. This guy was something else. He was a chef at a fancy wine venue. He had an arrogance about him that I loathed, and he knew it. He would park his gross fancy car in the garage when he would stay the night so that my brother's dad wouldn't see when he would drive by. And honestly, I probably wouldn't have said anything. I probably would have played it cool, but the way he treated our house like it belonged to him just made me so angry. So as any distressed 15-year-old would do, I got malicious. I would do small things, bleach spots on his favorite clothes, throwing condoms in the trash, ignoring his presence completely. Then I told my brother's dad what was happening at home. So this caused the whirlwind of chaos, resulting in a very, very fast overnight move in which we had zero electricity and an entire house to pack up as quickly as possible. Luckily, my boyfriend's parents had a power generator, so we packed our 3-bedroom home in a matter of hours. Do you think my mom's boyfriend helped? Nope. So fast forward a couple months, we were living in our new apartment with this piece of shit of a man who had a temper and a control over over my mom that I had never seen before. Looking back, I realized she was acting out of fear, projecting onto me because she was holding secrets about their relationship that she knew weren't healthy for any of us. Us kids shared the master bedroom, and I know she did this to protect us, so I don't want to paint her in a bad light, but they would flip the doorknobs so that we would be locked into the bedroom at night. He would drink and become very unpredictable, and I knew it was just one of those things to keep us from being able to see anything we shouldn't have been able to see. I also knew that he was doing harder drugs because he would buy them from my boyfriend's older brother. I didn't know how to tell her. Part of me wondered if she already knew. We got into a big fight one night and it slipped out. I could tell by the look in her eye that she definitely already knew. I was basically told I look for more information than I need to know, and I create stories from them that aren't what's really happening. He was buying from a coworker, she said. I told him not to do it anymore. It was a one-time thing. So here we are, 3 months before my 16th birthday. I'm minding my own business, sitting on the computer when they tell me they have a birthday surprise for me. It's going to be so great. In 3 months, we're moving from Central Valley, California to Port Townsend, Washington. Now, I don't know if any of you have been there before. It's beautiful, but it's a retirement island, basically. They found a house they liked, and we're going to move up early to get things situated while we lived at my grandma's. They would come back just before the beginning of the school year started, which basically meant we're moving now. Then in 3 months, we'd be moving states. I was pissed. I felt like they were doing this to punish me for telling on them, for knowing their secrets, and they were running away. So why so soon? Why no warning? We hadn't even been living at this place for very long, so all of it was very, very shady to me. Lucky for me, my boyfriend's grandma had worked in the courthouse, and she told me about emancipation. I could legally separate myself from my mom, so I could continue to go to school and get my junior year started at the same place that I had lived, or the same place that I had started high school. The paperwork was really hard, and I couldn't tell anyone about it because I was afraid they would stop me. I had to figure out ways to get my social security number and prove that I would have a safe place to live. This time period went by really, really fast. From hearing that we were moving to living with my grandma, with my brother and my sister by the end of the week, all while my mom hightailed to Washington with this dude who literally had the word garbage tattooed across his abs. We'll call him G-Bag. 2 months have gone by. I was back and forth in the process of making sure I filed the paperwork properly and waiting to get a hearing. Junior year started, and I fully planned on finishing high school there. So the first week went smooth. Middle of the second week, I go to buy lunch, and the lady tells me, "You don't go to school here anymore. You need to go to the office." I didn't eat lunch. Next class, the teacher keeps looking at me funny, but doesn't say anything. Next class, the teacher won't even let me in. Treats me like I hadn't been in their class for the last week and a half. So I go to the office. Apparently, the school called my mom for some odd reason, and she told them that I shouldn't be attending school because we were in the process of moving. So I lied. I told the office I was moving in with my grandparents, and I couldn't tell them I was getting emancipated because I knew they would ruin everything. Long story short, they didn't believe me. Called my mom back, told her that I was lying, and made me leave. This event triggered my mom to bring us up for a couple weeks so that way we could see if we liked it, or see how we liked it, rather. The house was gorgeous. It had a huge front porch balcony with big windows and an ocean view. The best part, it had a 2-bedroom, 1-bath attachment above the garage, a lovely little place to lock us in at night. Over the next 2 weeks, I was fully confident in my decision to go through with the emancipation. Every day was a battle. Mariah and I were basically playing mommy anytime G-Bag was home, and we'd be up in our little tower watching movies and staying out of his way. He never physically assaulted me. I think he knew that 15-year-old me wouldn't hesitate to kill him. He was a parasite in my eyes. I knew the more time that I was around him, the more he would push his limits. I remember a very mild event at a restaurant. One of our first nights we had moved there. He wanted to take us all out to dinner. He made my mom and my brother sit across from him, and then me and my sister on either side of him. He started to rub my leg while staring at my mom. Maybe he thought it was a funny game. I'm not really sure. She didn't do anything. I just kept pushing his hand away. Causing a scene wasn't worth it. Everyone was already uncomfortable. And he even had the audacity to degrade the waitress within the first 5 minutes. It was the longest 2 weeks of my life. And I'm pretty sure my mom had already thrown my phone against the wall the first week I was there, so I was already disconnected from everyone. I even ran away at one point along the ocean front and didn't care that the tides were coming back or how I'd get back. I'll tell you what, though, I had angels on my side because when I got back to my grandma's, my emancipation was complete. No hearing date necessary. It was just approved. I could only think that maybe the court saw her leaving us with my grandma for that short period of time as abandonment, or maybe because I was only a couple years away from 18, they were more worried that I would run away if I was forced to go. The hardest part for me was not being able to be around my brother and my sister, especially because my sister was just about to start high school. I had asked her at the beginning of the process if she felt safe around him. He never really bothered her too much. And I had offered to make sure that all of us were together but she really didn't understand why I couldn't be around him. She thought I was being dramatic. And I'm pretty sure that's the picture that my mom had painted for her. I didn't really get to talk to them too much after this. My mom was so angry that my emancipation went through that she was convinced that I knew someone who had made it be as such because I should have had a hearing. So the whole family thought I was absolutely horrible, causing all this chaos. I basically got shunned from everyone except for my grandma. A year goes by and I get a phone call from my sister asking me if he had ever been inappropriate to me. He tried to kiss her the night before. So my mom sent her to ask me if anything had happened between us. It's always been crazy to me witnessing my mom's behavior as a reflection of her relationship with my grandma. She held this deep resentment against her for things that had happened when she was a child that my grandma never addressed, or pretended that she didn't know were happening at the time. Maybe she was acting out of fear too. I got to witness a karmic cycle trying to force its way into existence through my sister and I. I know in my soul, had I not left, it would have repeated. And I would deeply resent my mom, but I didn't, and I don't. I spoke up. Even if it felt like everyone is against me, even though I was told I was wrong and being dramatic, this decision to trust myself saved me from sexual trauma at the hand of her boyfriend and taught me that my instincts are mine and for me to decide what's right and what's wrong for me. I observe and I'm aware, and I have every right to stand up for myself, no matter who is standing with me or not.
That's great.
Thanks.
That was about 9 minutes. How are you feeling?
Good. I'm like naturally a jittery person, so I like know my voice sounds shaky, but
That is an epic story of becoming emancipated. Yeah.
I threw a lot in there, I know.
Is this the first time that you've tried to put this story
Formulate it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a strong thing to do. And I think how was that experience of like writing it? Was it hard to write?
It was more difficult to figure out the words to have my mom come off in a way that wasn't degrading, because I didn't want that to be the sole purpose of this, because that's not what I took from it.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I think that was the hardest part for me wording it.
I'm gonna throw it up to the panel. Does anybody have any thoughts right off the bat?
Suzii, thank you so much. That was an incredible story.
Thank you.
Yeah, some of the ideas that stood out so much when I heard you telling it, you said you connect too many dots and you kind of placed yourself at the center of the drama as though you're the causality. You know, you mentioned the word chaos a couple of times. I heard chaos, 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 and that you were the person who was looked at as, you know, sort of like the person that ushered in the chaos. But
Mhm.
throughout the telling of the story, you were able to show us as the audience that no, like the adults who are moving overnight, they're the agents of chaos. Like, the adults who are upset that you're looking to protect yourself, they're the agents of chaos. So I really appreciated that you were able to kind of show those perspectives, that in the eyes of other folks in the story and in the background, you were sort of like the villain, but you realized by the end of your own story that you absolutely were not the villain. You were the hero. And also in looking in on your sister and your brother, seeing if you could, bring them with you in any capacity, that was amazing, just to have that presence of mind and to be able to show that. So that contrasted sort of, your mom being in the scenario with her boyfriend and really wanting to seemingly protect that relationship, but you were on the other side protecting the relationships with your brother and sister. And, so there's that. I appreciated seeing those images contrast each other. You mentioned karmic cycle, and I thought about this phrase generational curse. So you were looking at this idea that maybe when your mom was younger, she was in a similar position, or something had happened between her and your grandma where the air wasn't cleared. So for you to take another path, and it shows in the storytelling of how you took these other steps and you didn't stay quiet. So I appreciated seeing that path that you blazed for yourself too. I just felt like it was very clear in my mind as an audience member that, okay, we're in Washington State, 2 weeks. This isn't great, but when I come back, I'm emancipated. Like you're literally, you're free from all of this. So thank you so much. I just appreciated listening to it, and I thought that I was able to follow you from location to location, even with the changes between venues and the
Yeah.
time frames.
Yeah, you made
Thank
a
you.
a, a big long leap. Uh, I'm gonna throw out that I think there is something that a storytelling teacher in the Chicago community says all the time is one story can be a million stories, and a million stories can be encapsulated in one story. Uh, that's really prevalent here. You can zoom in to any of these scenes and create a 5-10 minute killer story from any of these moments. And I wonder, Kay had basically the same idea for theme that I walked away with, but I'd like to know, is that something that you thought about when you were writing it? It seemed clear the way you ended it, like this is my theme. But would you talk about your process or your thoughts about theme for this?
Yeah, it definitely took me a minute to figure out which direction to take it because there's so much. Even though it was a short period of time, but it was also a long period of time with how much detail was in it. So it was difficult to figure out exactly what parts I wanted to pick and pull because I could have emphasized more on playing myself to be out more of a victim by adding in more moments that would make it seem more dramatic, but I just didn't feel like that was necessary. I wanted it to be more empowering rather than a story of a victim.
Yeah. So so if I were just to say it in like a sentence or two, I I would say the same thing, that there's this idea of an agent of chaos. What does it mean to be an agent of chaos, and who who is it, right? Uh and then also that idea of like you're being told like we've all had that experience of being told something, being told who we are, or being told why we're doing things. And that's a horrible, that's like the opposite of today's lesson, right? That's not
Yeah.
listening.
Did you ask questions to get that?
Yeah. You're making assumptions that are really completely absurd. But I'm sure that we've all had experiences of doing it. Like, I know you. You're this kind of person. And then we find out that it's wrong. But when it happens to you, it's so tough. And if you come through that, if you hold the faith that you know who you are better than other people know who you are, you come through on the other side a lot stronger in your ability to trust yourself. That's sort of the theme for me.
Yeah, I would agree. That's what I was trying to go for.
Well, that's good that was clear. Mac, go ahead.
Yeah, Suzii, it's like an incredible survival story. It's like one of those shipwreck survival stories. And I thought about a number of things. One is, hey, wait a minute, you're 15. What was your junior year in high school supposed to be like?
Right?
What were the other girls doing? And I think it might be good just to. And a couple of things. The second thing is, I found that your people were fascinating. Like your mom, I really wanted to get to know her better. And you're so busy surviving, and your story is so much about survival, that it's easy to have almost the complete focus on you. But for instance, when you had that conversation with your mom, I forget exactly what it was about, where you're trying to tell her what's going on around the drugs and stuff.
Yeah, her boyfriend was buying from him.
A dialogue or a place where you could dialogue with her and do her voice and your voice, if you were up for it, I think that could help. And then your grandma, who was this woman? She was like your desert island, like, yeah. So I think
maybe keeping the focus on the heads of the generations, I guess, my grandma, my mom, and myself, since it's tied in with the karmic cycles.
Yes, and it also is like they were there. They should have been really there for you. Period. They should have been refuges for you, and you needed a safe place to live, etc. But I think that here you are making these very difficult decisions, being honest, being truthful, hanging in there in this a situation where you almost become the parent or the social worker or the child protective services worker, at 15. So it's very powerful. And I think you do have a number of stories in there that you could spin 5 or 6 or 8 stories out of this. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
So thinking about this idea of multiple stories and the theme you want to get to and structure and sort of playing with that idea in the context of this show here, I think what we're going to aim for is like a 5 to 6 minute retelling. And what I want to try to do is focus on creating scenes. Like right now, you are clearly telling us what happened. This. Yeah. We know you did a great job of setting the places, and you do it in such a way that those of us who have, an active imagination, we can fill it all in. But I want you to fill in these details for us. And one of the points that struck me was the line about, and I laughed out loud a little bit, he had garbage tattooed across him. And I think that could be an opening scene, right? Rather than saying it, Just show this guy. And the other thing that crossed my mind was just, you know, we had that little lesson. Sometimes when you say X, you mean, you know, I hear Y. Sometimes when someone tells you X, you should believe them, you know? Like, sometimes when they tattoo themselves with garbage, they're telling you the truth. You know, it's really simple. So yeah, and you've got
Also,
yeah.
I'm gonna just chime in a little bit.
Yeah.
So also in chat, there was a suggestion, and one of the suggestions is that it says the story, especially making the same mistake twice over generations, give a kind of 100 years of separation feel. And we're wondering if that's something that could be incorporated in any of the moments between the mother and the grandmother to highlight that. So that's just a suggestion.
What does that mean?
That means there's a book by a famous, I believe he's Mexican, author, Gabriel Garcia Marquez, and it's 1,000 Years of Solitude, and it's about they threw his name into chat. Thank you, NLS. And it's about this idea of repeating motifs. It's about and it goes through 1,000 years of this like family.
Oh, okay.
And just how the pains from one generation, the curse of one generation keeps going, and they make these little iterations on trying to fix it.
Okay.
That's a bit of a tall order, Suzii, right? Right at this moment. You know, it would be a complete sort of refiguring of the story. So I think we should probably help you just sort of focus on a couple of small parts here that are familiar to you that you could work a little differently if you wanted.
I like the idea of starting almost with the shock of this character of like, who are you and why are you like in my life?
Yeah.
Like, who brought you here?
So, you know, it's one of the tougher scenes, but I think it's one that's the most fleshed out, is that scene where you're at dinner and he reaches over and he's doing it purposefully. Mm-hmm. And he's showing off this boundary pushing to your mother. Mm-hmm. Right? And this guy with garbage tattooed across his chest is doing this. I think you can start there and then fill us in on how you got there, because I've got it here, but like throw it at me. It's right. You were trying to get away from this. Was the week or 2 weeks that you went up there to try it out, right?
Yeah.
And it's him basically being like, if you come, this will be a shit show. You're
mine, basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, Dan, can I throw something in here?
Yeah.
Are you okay with that? I just want to suggest another way you could look at it, Suzii, and that's that what hit me is when you first saw this guy and you described his arrogance and the way he was. And what I'm thinking is, here you're in a situation that's already pretty chaotic with your mom. It's like you have this little rowboat and you're trying to keep it afloat, and this thing comes in that's just going to swamp it. You know, it's just going to take up all the oxygen and whatever. So just, I don't mean to get in the way, Dan, but for me, that was a very powerful point. But I'd want to know a little more about what was going on already and why this guy was like a triple or perfect storm in terms of this situation.
I need you to elaborate more, because one of the things that I'm trying to do here is get her to that point of being as close to the inciting incident as possible. And that is her emancipation. Right? And for me, And so I guess I'll throw that question to you. Was there a tipping point moment for you where you were like 100%?
There was. I didn't include it in the story just because it was more of a like, well, I wouldn't, it wasn't like light in detail, so it wouldn't, I don't know. I don't think it would, I didn't think it would translate as well.
Well, yeah, just give us the light detail real quick.
Well, so one of the last days that I was there, for example, we were up in the little room above the garage and he was outside below the window and he had called me down. And he knew I didn't want to stay because me and my mom had been fighting nonstop the whole time I had been there. And it's obviously all fights over him. So we're outside talking and he's trying to be nice, like lip service, whatever. I honestly don't even remember what he was saying. Um, and then on the way back in to the house, I was trying to open the door and he just kept getting closer and closer and the doorknob was jammed. And so I was just kind of stuck in this position where I'm between a closed door and him closing in on me, trying to get in. And so for me, that was definitely the moment where it's like, no, there's no boundaries for you.
Yeah. I think I think that's a good place. I think that I like that. I like that scene. And I think you can do everything that Mac is saying with this scene, right? These sorts of incidences show his arrogance, show his that you just know this. Do you, Mac? I think that this is an interesting discussion. Do you want to give a little more context around your thinking about starting it in an earlier spot?
Yeah, I think you're right though, Dan and Suzii. I think you can start this any place you want, in
Sure.
a sense. That feels like a moment for you. And just use that to then from there fill out what this position is like for you. Why it feels so awful, for instance, to have your hand on the doorknob and he's closing in. Do you know what I mean? Or why, when you see this guy arrive in your life, it's like, oh crap. Or why, when he puts his hand on your leg at the restaurant, it's like, that sort of encapsulates a whole lot of stuff that you can then help us understand. So I think you do what you feel like you could actually have fun with. This whole thing is about having fun with the story and playing with it.
Right.
So,
Kay's gonna go next. I'm gonna throw out there though, because a couple people just jumped on recently. We're workshopping a story right now. Suzii here, who is on and runs the podcast Just Foreplay, Just Press Foreplay, told a really epic and awesome story about how she became emancipated as a young adult, and we're helping her workshop it. Kay, can you jump in?
Mac, ever since you mentioned the idea of having the question of what were other girls Suzii's age doing at this time, Suzii, I've been thinking about that and how amazing that would be as a way to get you closer to your inciting incident. So if you were to take Dan's advice about, you know, what are other girls, if you did it Mac's way, what are other girls doing right now? They're thinking about junior prom. They're like buying 7 colors of lip gloss and thinking that they're all different shades. They're doing this, but what am I doing? I'm reaching for this door, trying to get away from this guy with the garbage tattoo across his abdomen. He won't leave me alone. He's closing in. And this is like the rock in the hard place moment or whatever. And I could see both of those ideas kind of coming together in that one space of, a context for how you might be feeling, where you are in your life right now, and then who is this guy, who is this character that's coming in. So if you're interested in that at all, I would love to see the scene start there.
Okay.
So options.
Yeah.
So if we start with that scene, and we've got this idea of Yeah. All right. So for this retelling, because it's the easiest for me to envision, you're going to start at this tipping point. And then we want to figure out this theme of trusting oneself.
What if I started with that? What if I started with, like, I want to tell you a story about me gaining my independence, about me figuring out that I wasn't.
No. In some contexts that can be good, but what we want to do is the hand holding. Audiences like the puzzle and feeling like you're leading them to the clues. And if you tell them in the beginning, then they're like, oh, I've heard this sort of story before. Yeah, and they can kind of tune out. And I think you get it in there so clearly with the plot. You know, that is what happens. You get emancipated. You trust yourself. The truth kind of like wins out for as much as winning in this situation can happen. What is in the story to me, there's no point that you were worried that you doubted yourself. Is that how it felt for you?
Yeah.
Is there something that you can point to? Like, where do you think that self-confidence came from?
It definitely came from my mom, experiencing my mom's relationships with my brother's dad, because he had the meth addiction and living through all of that. So it's like I had already seen patterns happen before she brought garbage in.
Yeah. I have some similar experiences in my life that just like seeing certain things, they're so crazy or they're so dysfunctional. You're like, oh, this isn't me.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So this is a story that it's your story. You ultimately get to frame it. And from this, like us playing with it, you take it wherever you want to take it. But I think my thought is you do that door scene and you have the click moment, and then you can flash back to the meth situation, right? This clicks for me. I know that he's the crazy one. He's the one with inappropriate behavior. This guy with the garbage tattoo, I can trust that. However you want to say it. I know that because I've been through this before. My mom's been through this before. She doesn't see it, but I'm going to break the cycle. And then take us to emancipation. And then it's 3 scenes. And I don't know right off the top of my head what is the answer here for, like, what do you think most encapsulates like that? Can you go into right now a little bit of a scene for this idea of emancipation?
Like what kind of
like do you want it to be like showing you living with your grandma? Do you want it to be that moment where these other people believe you and they push it through without a hearing?
Mm-hmm.
Is there one, if you chose one, is there one that like resonates as like this is the click moment?
Yeah, probably it pushing through without having to get a hearing, because it's like, my confirmation that it was meant to be.
Yeah. So for the audience, let's talk about like structure and story here, and like how this plays out. We want to create scenes. We want to set things in scenes. We want to create that theater of the mind for other people who are listening. And so we've chosen 3 scenes, and we're trying to place that into the 3-act structure. So we're setting the scene, we set up, and we're going as close to the end as possible, as close to that inciting incident where the change is about to happen. And that change is her making the full decision to become emancipated. So we're starting it probably at that holding the door with this complete jerk. And then she'll have a flashback to the second scene, right? That first scene sets up basically the main 2 characters and the conflict. There's a jerk boyfriend of her mom and her who is in conflict with each other. And jerk is an understatement. And so then that's the conflict she's got to resolve. She has a flashback which allows her to know how she's going to resolve this situation, and then she resolves it by getting emancipated. So that is the 3 extras. You set the scene, you describe the conflict, you resolve the conflict. And that's how we have it set up in these 3 scenes. And the big thing that you want to do with this version of the story is really show us that door. Show him, sketch him out so that we see what he looks like, this arrogant piece of crap who's like always pushing boundaries. And I think one of the harder ones is that last one, just because it's sort of procedural and you've got to get that stuff in where you're like explaining to us who don't know how you get emancipated. Right? Like most people don't even know what the process is. Don't know that like normally there's a hearing. Most people can't get emancipated. Like it's a big deal that you got it. There are definitely people in the Chicago scene who have told stories about horrible trauma that they've been through, and they tried to get emancipated and the courts would not back them. So I'm very happy that you had this forethought to do it, and that you got out, and that you had a place to go afterwards. This is a powerful story. Like this is one worth telling that people need to hear, especially there's so many people who've been through stuff like you've been through, and getting to tell them is a big thing, because people don't know how to articulate their own stories. And so this is very helpful. Are you up for giving this a try?
Yeah, I think I'm ready.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm upstairs with my brother and sister. We're playing games up in our little room, watching movies, and I hear someone call my name. I know exactly who it is. I freaking hate him. It's my mom's boyfriend downstairs. What does he want? I don't know. I really don't care. My mom's gone, so why is he even asking me to come downstairs? As I'm walking down the stairs, I'm literally regretting every moment of going down there and talking to him. For one, because I know I can't keep my mouth shut and we're going to argue, and that's just how it always goes. And for 2, I don't want to be here living with him, and he knows that. So I go outside and we're talking, and I honestly can't even tell you what it is that we're talking about, because the entire time I just hate him, so it's just fire in my eyes. Our conversation is over. He was probably trying to convince me why I should be staying there living with them, because we had been visiting for 2 weeks to see how he would like it. But I knew I wasn't going to be staying. I knew that I didn't want to be living there. As I try to go back inside, I can feel him slowly coming closer to me. The house is really old and the doorknobs are kind of jammed sometimes. So I feel the door not opening, and I feel him getting closer and closer. And all I want is to get through that door, but I can feel him just closing in on me, and I'm irate. Now, what should I be doing at this time period? It's almost my 16th birthday. Like, I should be focused on, you know, who I'm going to go to prom with next year, what things are going on in my school, what my friends are doing, what movies are out. There's so many exciting things I could be focused on. And right now, I'm just trying to get away from this D-bag who's behind me, who I don't want anywhere near me. The reason for me, I think it was okay because I knew I was getting emancipated. I knew that nothing was going to stop me. I knew that even if the paperwork didn't go through, I was going to find a way somehow to not have to be there anymore. I knew in my heart that it wasn't the place for me to be. And I knew that my best interests were not, you know, looked at for being there.
How did you know that? That's the next scene.
I knew that because I wasn't being heard. I knew because anytime I would bring up conversations just to kind of play around with wondering if we're safe, I was shut down. I knew that it wasn't safe for us because we weren't allowed to be in the living room like a normal family at night. We had to be isolated, just us kids by ourselves.
Yeah, this is good.
You know, we knew that.
And now transition into the flashback.
For
right. I knew that. Well, yeah. You had been through this experience. You'd seen your mother go through this experience before.
Yes, this pattern was not. It wasn't new to me. I had seen it in how my grandma treated relationships towards my mom. I had heard it in how my grandma treated relationships towards my mom. I had seen it in how much my mom resents my grandma. So for my mom to be putting us through this same cycle was almost shocking to me. It was almost even more shocking to me that she wasn't willing to have a conversation around it. And then when the conversation was brought up, it was almost even more shocking then that she would rather choose the fear route of avoiding rather than actually communicating. So I knew that my decision to get emancipated was accurate. I knew that it was something that needed to be done for me. I wanted to have my sister and my brother with me, but I also knew that it wasn't my choice to take them. That had to be up to them. I did try, but it's not something that they wanted, so I had to take care of myself in that situation. Lucky for me, when I did get back home, the emancipation went through. I didn't have to worry about having a court hearing or anything like that. Yeah.
That's good. That's good. That's a good second telling. How did you? How? Yeah. So how do you feel about that one? With that, it changed it a lot.
Yeah, I like starting with the scene of setting the scene with him, and then I liked what Kay had said about like what are teens doing right now, and that hadn't even crossed my mind during that time period. Like being excited about things that are going on at school literally hadn't crossed my mind, but it should have. And so I felt like tying that in with trying to open the door and like thinking about like where should I be instead of right here. But the only issue I had was then tying that into bringing in the story of being emancipated.
Yeah. No, that was really smart. That was something that I forgot in my or I didn't put into my 3-act structure, and you slipping it in there in that door scene, and it didn't need to be a lot, right? Just those lines are so powerful to be like, you know, I'm in this like shit situation where this guy's fucking chasing me. This is not, I know that this isn't normal. It like really heightened that tension and drama. That was great.
So Suzii, I loved the way you're playing with this and what you're doing. And that scene at the doorknob, what I was thinking about is you could freeze us right there with your hand on the doorknob. It's not letting go. You could tell us a little more. And then did the doorknob finally open? What happened there? So that could be your way out. You know that
it's like a moment.
You know that you sort of freeze us there. You tell us all these other things, and when that doorknob opens, you can tell us about the emancipation, or you can tell us about, you know, that you sort of can end it with where you got to from that situation to be. Anyway, it's a very dramatic place. You could also give us a little more detail about what this guy looks like you did before, and what he's like, just
Yeah,
build
you've
it.
got
So
with
we
this
know why
version,
you
you've
got
got
to
a
get
lot
out
of
of there.
room because you were at around 4 minutes. Yeah, so in the fear of fishing for a compliment, did you find this helpful to you? Because
Absolutely.
yeah, because we made, like, when you make pretty major changes to something, it can stop feeling like your story. And just like you're saying in the story, listen to yourself more than you listen to critics and things like that. Your heart knows where the story needs to go, and you'll get it there in your own
It
time.
almost
That's
like
always
changes
going to be the better.
from like, yeah, I kind of think about it as like, rather than like the first one's more like a story, like reading a book, but then the way we changed it, it almost reminds me of like how a music video would be. Like you're starting with something extremely engaging and then working the bits around that. So it's not necessarily structured specifically, but it's more of a mental visual.
Yeah, I like that
Yeah,
analogy.
that's a
Music
super
video.
analogy. Exactly. You
Yeah.
sort of grab somebody right at the beginning, and
Yeah.
you paint the pictures, and you paint the scenes, and you take them along.
Yeah, because I picture that's you saying pausing at the doorknob is what made me think of that, because it just like takes you outside of being in that moment.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
TJ is, I think, busy
Here.
working on chat stuff. It's your turn to be up. Are you up for that?
Yeah. Okay. So, hello everyone. My name is Olatunji Bledsoe. I go by TJ for the sake of namesake. And today I will be telling a story about give me a second. All right, today I will be telling a story about the last time I was called a nigger. Nigger, actually. Yeah, I know, right? I paused to figure out if I actually wanted to tell this or not. So sorry, trigger warning. I don't know who's repeating the story, but you could just say N-word. Okay, you guys ready?
Thank you for that clarification.
Yeah. So, I'm pulling up to my job and I'm rushing because I'm late. I'm getting everything in order and I'm just trying to make sure that I get to my client and everything goes smooth. I park on the side of the building and I get out of my car. I make sure I look okay, I look proper, and I put my headphones in, I make sure I have my papers and everything's squared away. I started to walk from the side of the building to the front of the building, and I hear this man murmuring something, and I don't really pay attention. It's a lot of homeless people in the area. It's an area where heroin is pretty much like rampant. Um, so I'm not listening until he gets closer, and he was like, "Hey, you don't hear me talking to you? You look just like one of the niggers who robbed me." And I was taken aback because I am in a very very flamboyant purple shirt, brown belt, and brown wingtip shoes with khakis on. Ain't no way in hell that somebody robbed him in the outfit that I'm wearing. And he gets closer and he begins to push me. And he's an older guy and he smells like shit. His breath stinks. And I think to myself, what the fuck is going on? Who is this man? He obviously wants money. What what should I do? What can I do? And I freeze in a moment because you hear about how to prepare for moments like this. and they happen more frequently than people think. But when it happens, no matter how much it happens, you can't prep for it. And in the moment, I just pause and I look confused because I don't understand how he can walk up to a perfectly good stranger that believed that they robbed him and think for any instant that anything well would come for it. So instead of going into the store, I walked around the other side. I tell him, I don't know who you are. You need to get the fuck away from me. And that's it. And I just needed to go for a walk. And in this walk, I began thinking, the first thought that came to my head is scrolling through TikTok a few weeks before, I was hearing a conversation or like listening to people's streams and how people were saying that racism was dead. It didn't exist. When was the last time you actually been called a nigga? We're gonna use nigga. And I was just thinking about this. And I was like, what the flying hell is going on? And I began to think, no matter what I wear, no matter how I dress, how I speak, I can't change the color of my skin. And that's something that I don't want to. I'm definitely proud to be Black. Don't get this misunderstood. But what what's going on? And then I started to rethink, oh shit, that could have escalated extremely far because I forgot I carry a gun because it's something that I've always carried since I was able to get my CPL, and it became a part of me to the point where I forget I have it sometimes. It's just a tool to me, and I I'm walking, and I immediately go back start walking back and going to the store and letting them know what's going on because I just I couldn't react and I couldn't think. And that gun being on me in that situation, whether or not I looked like I was dressed to the nines and this man was homeless because of the color of my skin, it could have escalated to something extremely far beyond just a conversation. And I could have lost my life over a complete misunderstanding. And as I was having a conversation, the gentleman, the owner of the store, he gave me a hug, which is really weird because he's an asshole. And he told me it's okay and told me that some people are just assholes and there's definitely nothing you can do. And that definitely got me back together. And the point of this story is that there are crazy people in the world. And that is about it. I was going to keep going, but I feel like that was kind of long.
No, not long at all.
All right, so before we give anything, how do I feel about this? I feel okay. It happened. I forgot about it, and I just scrolled past something that reminded me. No, I'm not just scroll. I scrolled past something the other day that reminded me, and I was going back and forth on whether or not to tell the story. So when you do your criticism and everything, do not feel like you need to be all squeamish or anything like that. I will not get offended. I am not offended. This is about the story and the structure. All right.
Right on.
So go for it.
Yeah. Thank you for that heads up. I mean, that is a tough situation, and I think that no matter, it's tough for us as an audience to hear. So, I'm gonna throw it out to the rest of us. How is everybody else feeling in the room? Okay, you rose your hand.
Yes, TJ, thank you so much for sharing and thank you for volunteering how you're feeling in this moment because we have touched on the idea of vulnerable stories and having the agency to tell them and feeling open to tell them. I appreciated that you mentioned TikTok and that gave us sort of a time frame idea because like in the US, TikTok is a recent phenomenon. So in terms of framing the story, you're thinking, well, when's the last time that somebody called you out of your name this way and used the N word? And you put a TikTok reference, and I was like, that sounds pretty recent. So Dan had mentioned at one point that we don't always want to frame our stories by telling the audience what they're about to encounter, but you just gave us the perfect example of when you might want to frame what we're about to encounter as an audience and have that quote unquote trigger warning so that people understand emotionally where they're about to go, possibly. I thought that at no point did you lose us as an audience and have us tune out by prefacing that this was the last time you were called the N word. In fact, the way you've just framed that as the intro, as an audience member, I am 100% with you because you said the last time. So we already have some information going into the story about what's happening, that this isn't the only time. And as an audience member, we're going on this journey with you of like, not only is this a terrible thing to have to endure and face, but it's not the only time that you've had to endure it and face it. So that gives us a little bit of context with your intro that I thought was not a throwaway piece of information, and it wasn't a place to lose us. It was a place to bring us along.
Yeah.
And I think that that's probably all that I have for now. Thank you.
I know Mac has his hand up. I'll shoot to you in a second. I'm gonna piggyback off of that too. You also preference stories differently in a workshop setting, right? You might say, "Hey, this is something that's feeling vulnerable to me. This is something that blah blah blah." With this story, you've got the use of the N-word. That's a tricky word, and I'm gonna tell people now that been in situations where people have used the N-word in a workshop, and the way you handled that to be like, oh, if somebody else needs to reference this word, they can call it the N-word. That's a big thing. Tell people how you want it to be addressed. And hopefully you'll be in a workshop that's respectful and will follow it that way. But if you don't say it, there's a higher chance that there's going to be somebody who's confused on how to address it and will do it in the wrong way. And I've been in those workshops and, had people be like, I guess I opened the door for it. And it's like, you did a good job of explaining that the door is still closed. And so I appreciate that for our audience. And yeah. Over to you, Mac.
Yeah. TJ, great story. I want to know more. What were you doing in the neighborhood? What kind? You don't have to tell me now, but I want to know, like, well, what kind of job was this? You don't need to tell me. But what I'm saying is I want to know a little more about why you were there. I love the way you talked about the way you were dressed. I thought that was really, you really filled us in with all the details, The other thing is, I think I know what is it a CPL or C?
Yeah. CPL.
What is that? That's a control. That's a permit to carry.
Yes.
Yeah. So what I kind of thought about is that the guy, and I would have liked more description of him, what he actually looked like, his face, whatever. But he thought he had a permit to carry a concealed weapon. And his weapon was what he was going to call you. And the ability that he could just put that right out and accuse you of whatever he wanted and use any words he wanted. So you were both armed. And the next thing I think about is, tell us more about how it could have escalated. That moment when you go, oh, I got a gun. And this could have escalated. What are the escalations you could see? Because that's where your mind is. You can spin those out now as you think about it. There's a lot there. And then I just want to say one more thing, because stories is such a, don't just quit on us at the end. Tell us how all the different ways you kind of look at this. you know, just like you said, I can't change the color of my skin. I am like the way I am. But what is that, what is that kind of, what do you do with this? How do you digest this? And let us hang there with you as you just do that. So I know it's a lot of stuff, throw out what you don't want, but
Yeah.
really powerful situation.
I'm gonna go into 3 weeks ago now. We did a discussion or two about character versus narrator, and this is one where you made a choice to stay with you as character throughout the whole thing, pretty much. You as narrator know through this whole story that you have that gun. That gun is a choice for you because now you're in the narrator mode. You get to drop that bomb whenever. And so I don't have a specific suggestion to go along with that, but like know that that's a powerful piece of your story that you can front load. Right? This guy pushes me. I have a gun. This could go anywhere. You don't have, we don't have to know that you don't remember it in the moment because you skipped out.
Okay. All right. Gotcha.
Right.
All right. Yeah. Because that's what I was going with.
Yeah.
When I remember.
Yeah. I'm just saying, I'm just making it clear that you know that that's a choice that you're making to keep us close in with you and have it be a surprise there, rather a tension throughout the whole interaction.
Yeah. So the point, let me get your opinion on this. The point of that, and in tying in with Mac is that what my thought was is that when I remembered I had the gun is when I was walking, and then I was thinking like this could have escalated, and I definitely contemplated whether or not to say like all of the ways it could have escalated or what I could have done, but I was afraid that that would have been distasteful. Okay,
So, TJ, yeah, can I ask this? So, for me, I'm a Black woman. When I heard you say, "Oh, I forgot I had my gun on me," and you've been accosted by this man, the homeless man, a white man,
Yeah. Oh, I never
I'm
specified
thinking,
that.
I'm just thinking because you hear the slur thrown out, it could come from different groups of people. What I'm thinking to myself is I see this homeless man, he's a white man, he's called you this name, and even though you're well within your rights to just walk on by, to not be accosted by anybody, if the cops or anybody else wants to come by and say, what's going on here? Why is there an issue here? And you're a Black man who stopped with a gun on you, whether you have a permit or not, I became afraid for you for a moment as the audience member, because it's not so much that who's understanding that this man is, maybe, he doesn't necessarily have the best lot in life. The way you told the story about him being the homeless guy, it was a very sympathetic way that you told it. Even at the end, you said, well, this was a total misunderstanding. You gave it to him that he just misunderstood that you weren't the person who robbed him, versus going into the fact that he had, no right to accost you this way. So that's where my mind went. If you wanted to bring us there as an audience to say, well, one of the escalations could have been that as a person with the right to carry this firearm, I could have been stopped by the cops, or I could have had an interaction with someone who could have escalated this for me, because you clearly seem to have been a person who's willing to water under the bridge this. But there are other factors at play, right?
I don't know if this was your intention, but I caught that in your telling. I thought that you had a line where you were like, this could have gone badly, where somebody misinterpreted it and killed me. Okay. So it's good to know that you can make that more clear. for
Yeah,
some
that's
people.
all. Yeah.
Noah, it looks like
Um,
you have a comment.
Yes. So yeah, thank you so much for telling this story, because it is just like super powerful. And you know, just with everything that went on last year, not that last year was the beginning of it, but yeah, it was just like super powerful for me, hearing it from you, especially because I know you and we've been doing the show together. But things that I really liked is I liked, you described how he smelled, right? How the man
Yeah.
smelled. That told me so much. I didn't need to hear more about him, really. I understood that he was so close to you that you could smell him. He smelled bad, and that is like such a thing that, you know, a taboo thing to go around the world smelling bad. So that tells us so much about him. That was like, you know, so succinct. You conveyed so much in just that little fact, and then you contrasted with yourself, right? You are at the pinnacle of looking respectable and proper and professional. So I, you know, that was like amazing, and you did it like with so little. You painted that picture. Um, the other thing that I really liked is that you didn't tell us. I thought it was good that you didn't tell us about the gun till the end, because this story seems very layered to me, right? There is what happens, and then your response to it, and then you have to think about the context of society, and then after that you have to think about the context of yourself, and then again you have to go like, I could have gotten shot because a police person could have come along and, because of my race, misinterpreted the situation. And I thought that was clear too. I don't think it hurts to say that more explicitly. One thing is that as a person who did not grow up around guns, and has been, you know, guns have been painted as sort of this dangerous thing, that are tools of violence. When you mentioned the gun thing, another thing I thought about is this fear that I might react the wrong way. I might misinterpret the situation. Like what you painted seemed very clear to me, that, but if putting myself in that position, I would have been scared, like I could have shot this guy or whatever because of how threatening he was. So I don't know if that crossed your mind at all, or like, but that is something that I thought about when you were telling that, in addition to like the danger that you were in. So yeah, thank you so much. That like was so awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna butcher your screen name. You Chia Lotus also had a similar experience in chat, and sort of as we were talking about articulating that these things are experiences, and even ones that we think are unique or that we think are universal, it's really important to share these stories, because the way you articulate them with your voice is just necessary to help us filter it and to make us feel connected. And it's really it's good that both Suzii and TJ here sort of got a chance to share these hard stories with us and work on them. So thank you guys for sharing, and thanks to people in chat for sort of bonding and recognizing with that. Yeah. Bum, 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 bum. So it struck me what Kay said too, that you just gave this guy a lot of benefit when you were like, it was just a misunderstanding. But especially because you had put that thing, like, nobody wearing wingtips and a suit accosted this man. I don't look, to me, I was just like, I did, you said X and I think Y. I definitely did that in the story. That guy said X and I was just like, no, this guy's just a piece of shit. He doesn't think you look like anybody. Nobody ever accosted this dude. I hate him. Fuck this guy. And so that you were able to take sort of that level of high road. I know that this is not about the story and you asked me to stay on topic, but I am proud of the way you handled it, and people are saying that in chat too. So where do we go? What can we say about structure that helps you, and maybe gives us an idea of how to mess around with it for the second telling? I think Mac personally had the right thing, and it's this ending that you gotta stick the landing on this one, right? What's it about? What's the theme? What's this final image you want us to walk away from? You've got a powerful story, one that people want to hear. You've got it in a container that's going to be easy to hit in that 5-6 minute range. How do we stick the landing? What is the ending of this?
Well, I don't know. I was gonna wrap it up, because the whole point of it is that, like, when I was walking back, I was thinking about that. I was thinking about the TikTok that I saw, and Noah.
Oh, I didn't mean to interrupt. So I think if I remember correctly, you kind of end it with your boss saying, like, some people are just assholes. But to me, that's like the exact opposite of the theme. Right? This didn't happen just because the guy was an asshole. I think he saw, I forget who said it. Maybe it was Dan. It was Mac. He had a weapon too, right? It was about race, and the story is about race. And it's about, to me, it's about something bigger than just individuals being assholes. I do love the line where the guy gave you a hug even though he's a fucking asshole every other day. That was great. But to me, I did not like the ending because it didn't feel like it fit into the theme. So that's all I wanted to say. That's all I had to say on that.
I'm gonna check in with Susan and Suzii to see if they want to get any. No pressure, but are there any comments that you want to throw in and check on? No. Okay. So then it's that question of, yeah, I want to check in on you about that. How do you feel about that as a suggestion? That didn't,
Yeah.
partly we don't like this ending because it doesn't feel true to the story.
Yeah. So, I mean, what I think, I like Noah's suggestion. So Noah, do you think that I should end on the part where when I was walking, I don't remember I'm trying to remember the order of it, where I was talking about the TikTok where it's like, when is the last time? And the fact that it doesn't, it really doesn't exist.
Yeah, can you think about? I'm gonna jump in for Noah. You timed out a little bit, but yeah. My question is, can we come up with that TikTok meme? Can we walk away with an image from that and get that in there as an ending? This thing doesn't happen, and what that is. Who's the person who's pushing that message?
Right.
Noah, since I was talking over you, sorry.
So I think the realization that you could have gotten shot over this by the police is sort of the climax. Oh, did we lose him? And so I think, it's okay that, to me, like, it would be fine if you go and get consolation, that human contact in the store, but to leave it at, there's just assholes out there, that's unsatisfying. So, I mean, I don't know. Somebody else is going to have to jump in here. For me, it would be okay if you're just like, I realize, like, this could have ended poorly for me, even though I was this aggressor was totally in the wrong. And so I went to work and I got a hug and I had to keep going with my day. Could be one ending for me.
So here's what I know TJ's not here anymore, but here's the thing I think about is, where does this guy get permission to do this? What are the structures that give, a woman to be called like a really crappy sexual name, or but where does this guy get the permission? And that's that it's all around him in some ways and in our culture. But the other thing that TJ can do is he can just move into a narrator at that point. He doesn't have to do what he was thinking when he was walking away. He can take it now and work it in any way that he wants, in the ways that mean something to him as a Black man. What does he figure with this? Where did this come from? Or whatever, however he sort of digests these kinds of things, or can be invited to digest it now.
And I was just thinking, Mac and Noah, that was very interesting. Our cultural differences here in wanting to hear the structural reasons why TJ might have been in this scenario and been in danger, even though, through no fault of his own. For me as an audience member, my mind immediately, when he said, oh, he went back and got a hug from this other asshole that's in the store. It's like, that's weird. He gave me a hug. It's like, man, some people are just assholes. It was the larger truth of life that we can call all these structural challenges that people face, whether it's ableism or sexism or racism. We can call them by these huge, daunting names, but like at the end of the day, people are fucking assholes. If you know your worth as a human being, you don't necessarily need to think about every scenario in terms of racial inequality or gender inequality or any of these things that we know that they parcel out into. It's just like, I'm a person who could understand that this guy is down on his luck and he's taking it out on me, and I can forgive him for that and keep it pushing, because sometimes people are just assholes. Versus, like, to me, it showed him as the storyteller having this meta experience of seeing the moment and knowing what was going on with this other person. And even again, like, he's getting a hug from this other guy, but it's not a kumbaya moment. It's like, you're an asshole too, bro. Like, you chose this moment to be less of an asshole, so thanks, but I'm going to keep pushing with my day because I know that people are just people.
How much did you catch, if anything, of what we've been saying while you're gone?
Literally the last sentence.
The last sentence. Okay. Suzii has her hand up, and I'll throw it to her, but I'm gonna just summarize, if you don't mind, Kay, what I think you were saying was that ending for you. Yeah, let me ask you if I'm hearing it correctly, and then you can correct me. Is his ending for you allowed him to own the story, kind of? And for you, it was a bit of a relief to not make it about this other thing because you know all about the other thing.
Yeah, TJ, if I could do the mini encapsulation, Noah and Max said to me, they said they were hoping for you to point out like the structural pieces of why this guy who was in a different socioeconomic position could have put you in peril. Um, because it's counterintuitive to us that somebody who doesn't have a lot of power in society could still make a big deal and bring you down. But for me, for you to just be like, well, I went back into the store and this guy gave me a hug, and that's weird because he's an asshole too, and you just kind of walked out into the sunset from there. That made sense to me because it's, in my opinion, all the structural forms of inequality are linked, and it's about people being assholes. It's about people feeling threatened and insecure and trying to hold on to certain resources. And so, I'm going to hurt the person who I think I can hurt if I can get away with it, rather than looking at what's bad in my life and what's bad in my situation. So for me as an audience member, I didn't need you to say the structural piece. The fact that you actually were able to say, well, this other guy's an asshole that just gave me a hug, it just brought it all together for me that people have these motivations. That's people. I didn't need the structural piece. It was implied to me.
Suzii, go ahead.
I was just gonna agree with Kay. Like, I felt like by you ending on the note of him, of kind of just discrediting him as an asshole, was like your way of showing that you're not gonna carry whatever it is he just threw at you with you for the rest of your day or even into any other day. It's like, no, you literally are an asshole. This is a moment and you don't belong in my life, so I'm not gonna carry any of that.
Okay.
So I love everything that Kay had to say about it.
Yeah, I don't want to cut people off, but we're running close on time. Yeah, that's a bit why I was checking in with you, TJ, to see, what's the theme that you want to get. The way it ends makes it something different currently. I think the larger piece of the puzzle that Mac and Noah are pointing out is true. It's not a 10-point landing ending currently, right? You got to spend time. You can walk away if you want the structure to be like you taking it back. You're not going to let it, and whatever it is, then you're going to structure the story differently throughout and hit that theme with a different image as you walk away, and that's going to be, you're going to take time and write it correctly. If the story is about this structural thing and that's what you want to talk about and get the nuances in, then we talk about this other style where you structure it, you weave that in throughout, and you hit us with maybe a TikTok ending, which is where we dropped off when you popped out. And so just to reiterate, what are you thinking? Did the ending for you, you felt good about the telling of the story in general, but that ending, did it resonate the way that you wanted it to?
Well, no, originally I was supposed to end with the synopsis. My paper's in the other room. I think I was supposed to end with the synopsis of walking back to where it's just normal. And I kind of just added that the store part. It did happen, but I added that because I felt kind of it added.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask what if you had to give a 1 or 2 sentence theme to this? What's your theme? What do you want us to walk away with?
The real focus, I don't know, it's kind of the two things that people are assholes, and the TikTok thing, because that's really the reason I thought about it. It was all right. Yeah,
let's talk about real quick then. One of my questions was, can we come up with who's pushing out this message? right? Who are the TikTok people who are saying this nonsense? We're past it. When's the last time you this is the only indicator of, racism today. If they don't say the N-word, there's no racism. Like that's not how racism works. But who's pushing out this message on TikTok? And yeah, that's just my question.
Oh, I don't remember. I just remember because it was a story of someone's story where it's like you scroll and you got somebody pretty much reacting to something, and the guy he went through like, well, this, and he said the same thing you're saying, which is just because they don't say the N word doesn't mean it doesn't exist. But that was like that because he was talking about the difference of overt and covert, right? And then they in the original video was talking about overt racism. The gentleman, just like you, was referring to overt racism, and this brings back like overt does exist and covert does exist. So essentially, yeah.
Okay. Are you I'm gonna need a second to mull this over. Does that give you anything for like what's that last image? That's a trickier one than what I thought it was.
Yeah, that was my problem. I couldn't stick with something, so that's yeah. I couldn't stick with one particular thing. I was trying to figure out what that was.
So in storytelling, I forget who had this issue before, but it is one of those things. Talking about a story in another medium in a storytelling section, that's a really tough thing to do. Summarizing you saw me futzing with it when I was trying to explain the meme.
Okay.
When people try to explain the funny gif they saw, the dream they had, this great movie, let me tell you about it, in the middle of a story, it's very difficult. So I'm just going to say that this is a difficult problem that you can solve it, but it just takes time to figure it out. How are you going to explain this TikTok message if you're going to go back to the TikTok? I think that would be a powerful ending. Maybe you look at TikTok and you see something else. Maybe because there's part of your thought, right? You were going to end it on, this is how my day ends, right? It all goes back to normal. I had this event, I got the hug, but now I just have to go on. That's what I hear you saying. And then you look at TikTok and it's just some random funny bullshit. And that's enough. That would be enough to link us to that opening. It wasn't just funny bullshit an hour ago, right?
Like that. Yeah.
So that's a thought. We have minutes left. I'm gonna throw it to Noah to make a choice as to which of these two stories he's gonna try to give us.
They were both really powerful, so thank you. But that makes my job harder. I think I'd like to do Suzie's story, if that's okay. And I liked the second version, so I want to try that. Really quickly.
Yeah. Really quickly, I'm going to. Kay and I are gonna double team this transition and say this is something unique to our storytelling show. And what we do is we have someone tell the story that they just heard. And if you, Kay, you've seen this happen a couple of times, and if you just say a couple sentences about why you think this is a cool technique and how you see it personally, that's perfect.
What's so amazing about this is when you are listening well to someone else's story, you pick up on these details, and that person who was the original teller, they get to hear their story given back to them. And it's a validating thing to know that somebody was listening so closely and they weren't just waiting for their turn to speak. And also, as an audience, it gives us an idea of what it means to have a different voice in terms of storytellers. The same content, but different people telling it, it will come out in a different way.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. Noah, hit it.
Okay. Two quick questions, Suzii. One, the G-Bag's profession. He worked in a restaurant. What did he do there?
He was a chef.
He was a chef. Okay. And you were in the room with your brother when he calls you down?
My brother and my sister, yeah.
Your brother and your sister. Okay. All right. So I am playing with my brother and my sister. We are in the little mother-in-law suite above the garage. We've been here 2 weeks. This is sort of the trial period if we're gonna move in with my mom's boyfriend. And I hear him calling me from outside in front of the garage. And there is no reason for him to talk to me. My mom is not home. She's out on an errand. And there's no reason for me to talk to him because I hate his guts. But against all better judgment, I decide to go down and see what this asshole wants from me now. And as I'm walking down the steps, with each step I take, I get a bigger and better sense of what a bad idea this is, because nothing good can come of it. I know that. He has nothing to say to me, and I'm not going to hold my mouth, and I've got plenty to say to him. So I walk out there, and just the sight of him makes my blood boil. He's just an arrogant, cocky motherfucker, a petty tyrant who lives in a chef and has this inflated sense of self-importance that you can only get from bossing around, 2 or 3 people all day. And honestly, I don't know what he told me that day. I don't care. My eyes have just glazed over because I just have no respect for him at all. And somehow I get through it, and I turn around, and I'm gonna go back up to my brother and my sister, who I love as much as I hate this man. And it's an old house, and I reach for the doorknob, and it sticks. And I can sense him walking up behind me, and I'm sort of desperately trying to get this door to open, and he just gets closer and closer, and he is in my space. He is far closer than anyone has any right to be. And I almost freeze, but I know I got to get upstairs. And right there, I know that I am not going to move up here. Whatever it takes, that's what I'm going to do so that I'm never in this situation again, because I know what's happening here. I know what kind of a person he is. I know what his relationship is with my mom. I've seen this behavior before. I've seen this relationship. This is the relationship my grandmother has seen in my mother. This is the relationship I've seen between my mother and her other boyfriends. And luckily, the door unfreezes. I pull it up. I run upstairs, and my ordeal is over. Shortly thereafter, I'm back home, and I get a new cell phone because it's been smashed in an argument while we were gone. And I get the great news that I've been emancipated. I put in the paperwork 2 weeks ago. And even though usually you need a hearing and there's this vetting process, my situation is so clear that they have approved my emancipation without going through that formality. And I am free, and I know that I'm going to be safe and that I made the right decision.
Well done, Noah. Thank you so much. We are gonna that is the end of our show. Thank you for everyone who is watching this in real time and anybody who watches it afterwards. Everybody say goodbye. If you look in Twitch chat, you will find the Discord link. Feel free to join us there. We'll talk in a little bit. It might take us a couple minutes while we wind down on our end, but we'll be there in 5-10 minutes. And we'll hang out and answer your questions, and you can talk to us over voice and all that. Yeah, thank you, Silly Gnome and NLS and Lotus for coming and hanging out with us tonight. Goodbye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you,
Bye, guys.
Suzii. Thank you,